Awesome. So hi everyone, thank you so much for coming to De-Stigmatizing Disability. This event is hosted, created, organized by Emma. She's done an amazing job. She's one of our graduate interns in the Center for Diversity and Inclusion. I just want to let everyone know that this event is being recorded. And so that should not be too alarming for folks, but it will likely be publicized on our YouTube channel. And so if you want to make sure that you don't use your name or anything like that, I just want to make sure that folks are aware of that in advance. Folks who are in the room, you will not be seen on camera, but for those of you who are in Zoom land, you will be able to speak and your face will be seen if you're on camera. So if there are not any further questions, then I can turn it over to Emma.
So hi everyone. Welcome to the Center for Diversity and Inclusion Student Panel De-Stigmatizing Disabilities. I have a transcript of this introduction just in case anybody like me is hard of hearing and wants to follow along. So if you'd like one, feel free to take one. I don't have it. I don't know if everybody would have any of the panelists don't need one.
If you need any.
Yeah, if you need any, you can.
Yeah.
Okay. Good. Thank you. So everybody else needs one that's here, and maybe you can ask some of the topics to you. So if you need to sit close to the front, or if you need any other adjustments to your surroundings to make them more accessible, please let us know. Yeah, that was pretty much all about the transcription.
Yeah, very good.
So my name is Emma Merrigan. I use she, her, hers pronouns. And this semester, as Dr. Williams mentioned, I'm working as a graduate student intern at the CDI under the supervision of Dr. Williams. With her help and that of Associate Director Travis Tucker, I'm working to create programming around the themes of disability, accessibility, fatphobia, and healthism. This panel is part of that programming, and we are excited to open a dialogue around these topics with all of you, both in person and online. So, I want to start today by thanking our panelists for sharing their stories with us, and thank all of you. Thanks as well to those of you in attendance, and to Dr. Trani from the Brown School, who started work and helped to recruit many of our panelists for this event. I had a breath from moving around so much today. In 2015 and 2016, the National Center for Education Statistics reported that between 19 and 20% of undergraduate students and 12% of post-baccalaureate students had some form of disability. Yet only 40% of undergraduate students with disabilities completed their four-year degrees. That's compared to 57% of able-bodied and/or neurotypical students. Data on degree completion for graduate students with disabilities is more sparse, but various sources from the early 2000s indicate that, depending on the field, completion of doctoral degrees for students with disabilities range from less than 1% to a little over 2%. While these data sets are a bit dated, they give us some idea of the still vast disparities in education when it comes to accessibility. These same disparities have seen important shifts, some positive and some negative, in the context of COVID-19 and the attempted return to pre-pandemic routines in recent semesters. Significant obstacles to students with disabilities can include lack of appropriate and individualized institutional support and accommodations, infrastructural obstacles on campus, financial hardships, and discriminatory attitudes towards people with disabilities more broadly. So, since at least the 1950s, students with disabilities and advocates alike have mobilized and demanded systematic changes to the ableist structures and expectations of academic life, and they continue to do so to this day. We hope that this panel will open up some conversations about what accessibility can look like, both here at WashU and in the other communities to which you belong. In keeping with the spirit of disability advocacy, we have tried to make this event as accessible as possible using the resources we have. For that reason, we have chosen to hold the panel both in person and online. In addition, we have live transcription enabled, which will be displayed in large font on the screen at the front of the room. Unfortunately, we do not have sign language interpreters available here today, but we are more than willing to use alternative methods of communication, such as writing, when we need to. Some logistics before we get started. The nearest gender inclusive restrooms, I thought were to the left of this door, but those are actually just showers. So we'll take a right, left, left, and left. If you need help, I can help somebody find them if needed. There's also men's and women's restroom right around the corner. When exiting the classroom, you'll go exit to the right and then take another right at the end of the hallway. Okay, so does anyone here need any lighting or volume adjustments either on screen or in the room or on Zoom? Do you need any volume adjustments there? Okay. If you need like someone to speak louder or anything like that, feel free to raise your hand during the panel. So after the panelists share their stories, we will open the floor for Q&A, brainstorming, and general conversation. Are there any questions before we get started? Okay, great. So first to present, Dave is a PhD student in the Baldwin Business School in the Organizational Behavior Department.
Thank you, Emma. This guy roped me into this. You guys are going to regret it because they made me go first. I think I'm going to try to keep this short. They said 3 to 5 minutes, so let's try this. So I'm a PhD student in social science, basically, and one of the most important things in social science is being able to get really clear what they call concept clarity. What is it exactly, stigma? What does it mean? And most broadly, it's this negative attitude you have towards somebody or a group of people, and it influences what you believe about them. So it might say for us, okay, people with disabilities, they shouldn't be included, they're different, they're inferior and whatnot. So that's kind of what we're tackling, what they call these mental images in our mind that we might have and lead us to have attitudes towards people. That's stigma. And so I've experienced stigma to greater and lesser degrees, despite my obvious charm, since I was 5 years old. So when I was 5, I was diagnosed with something called Hunter's syndrome. And it's a lysosomal storage disorder that affects every system, organ, joint in your body. I've had over 15 surgeries by now, and I've been very fortunate to get to where I am. But I've experienced stigma. And I've also been blessed to see where stigma can get dissolved. How can it start disappearing? And I'll share a story with you about how this kind of happened for me and how I continue to see it happening when it does. So when I got to middle school, I still remember my first day. It was one of those classic dark, cloudy days, getting over there, 6th grade, going up to the blacktop. And all of a sudden, this kid, he was waiting for me. He just looked at me and was like, "What? Are you 30 coming over here?" And I looked very different from other people, especially as I was growing up. So I started getting all these stares. I didn't really know what the heck he meant, but that tone wasn't very nice. So I kept getting stares. And over the year in middle school, I kept becoming more and more isolated. I didn't fit in the friend group that I used to have in elementary school. All of a sudden, didn't want to be around me. And so I just was walking around alone a lot. But I decided to join the band. I used to play the trombone, this crazy instrument that I can still barely reach the end of it. It's the one with the slide. I can still reach, but it was the most fun thing in the world. And so I got to the band program, and the director had it very competitive. So there were all these auditions for it. And so in the beginning, I tried out, and I got second to last year. And of course, I was depressed. I was like, oh, I can't even do good at this. And so that year went on. Not much happened until I joined a summer band program. And there was a new director there, and he was something completely different. He would look at us and he would say, no matter what chair you are, no matter what you got to lead from your chair. And so what he would do is he would take every single person and look at how do you make them shine, no matter what part you were, the first chair or last chair, and he made you better and better. So I got inspired. And so I started practicing more and more and more until I was very fortunate to start winning awards for being able to solo. And all of a sudden, this stigma that was around me started disappearing because I started developing into this person that was good at something. So I say to educators or whoever's going to be dealing with people, I think everybody's an educator. one of the keys to getting rid of stigma, when you see somebody that might have something, you know, they might be stigmatized towards it, is to see what can they be good at? What are their strengths? Where can they shine? And I think the more they can shine, the more that stigma will disappear for them. The disability, the condition, it may or may not disappear depending on medicine, science, and whatnot. But you can add and break the old image and add something new. And so I don't think any of us really wanted our conditions. I don't know about that. Maybe on some days. But I think all of us and other people with disabilities of all kinds, they want to make a difference. But it's hard sometimes to find ways to do that, find ways to build on our strength and open our opportunities. So for people that can, that's what I want this message to be about. You know, to break stigma, look at people and find where are their strengths, how can you build on it? I know it's not easy. I know we all have hard life, hard days, we're busy and whatnot. But I think if we can do this, we're going to achieve this synergy. I think we're going to build a better world together and start dissolving disability stigma. I don't know how long it's been, but I think it's been enough time. I will pass it on to our next person. Thank you.
Thank you, Zane. That was just like perfect timing, 40 minutes and 30 seconds. That was great.
Wow, didn't even hear that.
Oh,
Yeah, did it.
You feel like you're being played off the stage at like an awards show or something. Okay, so next to present will be Aeryel, who's an advanced standing MSW candidate in the Brown School, and with a concentration in mental health and a specialization in policy.
Hi, that's me. Can everyone hear me? All good? Okay. If I'm talking too loud, just kind of signal to me because I can tend to get a little bit loud. Okay, so yeah, I am a student here at the Brown School. I feel really fortunate to be here. I hail from a tiny little place called Wyoming. It is really different than St. Louis. We'll kind of get into that a little bit, but first off, I want to hit you with a statistic that I thought was interesting, which is that 15% of the global population encounters or identifies as disabled or a person who experiences disability. I think that is probably more than most people would expect. So just kind of keeping that in mind, I want to kind of take some time to highlight some of the stigmas that I have experienced and that I know are fairly common for people in our population group or who identify with that particular identity. So first off, I think one important thing to consider is the role of suffering and pity. The way that disability is framed, I think really commonly, is that a person who has a disability is suffering. And the important thing to note is that suffering isn't inherent to our conditions. Maybe we're suffering in moments, but that the real suffering is actually inflicted by the systemic kind of barriers that we're presented with. So that's kind of this model of the social model of disability. So sorry, I have to adjust my mask because my glasses are moving up and down, getting all blurry. So I think that's a really important thing. So when you feel this temptation, perhaps to feel like, oh, poor them, or, you know, this pity response, it's important to think about, well, why is this person potentially having a tougher time? Is it their fault? No, it's usually because we have been systematically put in a position where we have access to fewer resources. And also, yes, sometimes disability can be linked to pain. In my case, that is true. I have a lot of pain caused by my disabilities. But even in pain, suffering is not inherent. So people can be in pain and still lead very happy lives and want to be engaged in their lives. So it's important to, I think, address that suffering, because it also leads to this idea of infantilization, where we look down on people with disabilities and patronize them. So this kind of, I'm sure you guys have heard the term inspiration porn, where a person with a disability does something and it's like, wow, they overcame that disability and they accomplished this thing. And like, yeah, we should celebrate everyone's accomplishments. But it can be really patronizing to feel like we're being celebrated just because we have been systemically oppressed. So these are some things to consider. And also, you know, the sin/moral framework where there's something like karmically that we have done to deserve, you know, being disabled, or we need to atone for a sin. That's something that I have personally experienced, you know, growing up kind of in a church environment. You'll hear, you know, you need to talk to God and he'll heal you, and when, you know, you've kind of done what you need to do. So these are important stigmas I want you guys to kind of consider moving forward. And because I am just blabbering on, I have a lot on my on my list that I'd like to touch on. I'll skip my story of my first day, which here at the Brown School, I'm going to be straight up with you guys. I went to the only university in the most Republican state in the Holy Union. They give me a great scholarship, everyone, so I'm thankful. But yeah, it's important to give that disclaimer. But I will tell you this, I was expecting to come to this school who prides itself on diversity, equity, and inclusion in its mission statement. And I was expecting to feel more represented and more included and have access to greater equity, when in fact I experienced less. And man, was that disappointing. So I would love to see the buttons that you hit for the door to open. I'd love to see those like universally work. I don't know about all of you. I'd love to see clearly marked accessible routes to class, fewer staircases, more ramps, please. It took me 45 minutes to get to my first class. And I'd love to see a more personal experience with the Disability Resource Office and all of the infrastructure related offices on campus. Of course, I have lots more to say, and so do all these wonderful people. So I will pass it on to Emma. Yeah.
Yes, very good points. You reminded me actually of one time I came across this woman who was in the street who was I don't know. Oh, yeah, sorry. I've been told I need to pull down my mask so people can hear me because I'm soft spoken. And she told me that if I prayed to Jesus, he would fix my eyesight. If I knew how to read the Bible, he would fix my eyesight. And I was just like, I like my glasses. I have better glasses. So anyway, so thank you for bringing up those different discourses about disability that are so prevalent even today. So next, Elle is an MSW candidate in social work and will graduate in 2023.
God bless. I hope. Hi, ladies and gentlemen. First of all, thanks for being here because I know there is really beautiful weather outside. I would like to walk in the street also, but it's really important topic that we are discussing now. Aeryel and Zay touched really good points. About 1 billion worldwide, 15% of the global population has different type of disabilities, and I mean documented disabilities. According to statistics, 61 million adults live with disabilities in the United States, and it's roughly 26% of adult population in the United States. I'm sure there are more, but some people don't want to be identified as people with disabilities or disabled. We know that in British English, people call it disabled, but in American English, we call it people with disabilities. But they are the same thing. Why they don't want to be identified as people with disabilities? Because of stigma. Historically, people with disabilities have been stigmatized. You know, in the history, disability has been linked to disease and helplessness. Even in some culture, it was like a ancestral curse. No, there are enough books about that. What can I say? I'm happy that we are not experiencing the same thing in this modern world, but we are facing still with that. These stigmatizations show itself in different ways, with stereotypes, with social avoidance, with discrimination. I can share you with my a bit about my self-experience and my observation showing in my country. I spent my 11 years in boarding school, which is isolated building, just three floors building, isolated from the out world, and we were around 300 children with disabilities and with different disabilities. We had mental, physical, and etc. And when I, just got out of school when I was 18, I had this stigma to typical people. Why? Because we didn't grow up together. And several years ago, I applied for a job, and we were in the interview. The HR was very professional. I got several questions, and at the end, he gave a question. How do you wear your clothes? Such a crazy question. But my reflection was, I suppose, how you do it. Because I can't blame him. I can't blame him why he gave this question. Okay, we could call it unprofessional. We could call it whatever we want. But he never saw blind people in his life, because in my country now we are building up inclusive education. But before, in my country, any children with disabilities couldn't study the same school with typical students, with typical children. And I'm sure this HR never saw blind people in his life, and he's really curious about that, how we are wearing our clothes. And also, I can share one short moment also that, for example, it was my early of 20s. I entered the bus, and suddenly 5 people stood up and were calling me to 5 place. Let's come and sit here. I don't have any part to sit in 5 places in the same time. But they were as if they were in competition. Who will be good person? Who will give the seat to me? Who will get the prize from God? There are many things to say, but I know there are my other colleagues who will share something with you. But I'm open to your question in the introduction section of this. What's that? Of this part.
Thank you. Yeah, I think you brought up a really great point about sort of building on what Aeryel was saying before, people having this sort of savior complex around people with disabilities and thinking that they're helpless and that they should just do everything for people with disabilities, when often they can do things just maybe in different ways. So next to speak, we have Mackenzie. Mackenzie is an MSW candidate and research assistant at the Brown School and will graduate in 2022. Is that right? Okay, or 22, great.
Thank God. Hi, I'm Mackenzie. My story might be a little different than everyone else's. I was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis in 2018. I was 24 years old, and 2 weeks clean from drugs. So boy, did she have a fun summer. Yeah, so I got to wrestle with that new identity, and this one, I dealt with a lot of things other people did about the prayers and the weird remedies and the YouTubes people would send me. And then, of course, a month later, Selma Blair had her whole thing where she exposed that she was diagnosed with MS. She had the vocal modulation and she has a lot of walking troubles. So I had a lot of people ask me when that was going to happen to me. You know, why I didn't look like that, as if they were hoping for me to have more struggle, which didn't make a lot of sense. Then it's been a ride. I was immediately told, do not tell anybody, keep it a secret. As soon as your employer knows, you're done. I actually have a medical alert tattooed on my arm that says multiple sclerosis because I did go down in a grocery store once and I do not want that to happen again. So that my biggest stigma relates completely with the workplace. I've even asked to not have my name attached to this because it is unfortunate, but I know it is a truth that once my name is attached to something, it is out there forever and people will use it against you, whether or not it's an atrocious thing, but it is a current fact of our world. And I'm about to enter the workforce in May and I can't have that working against me. I have it working against me. I'm a woman. I am objectively attractive. I've been hit on by my doctors. My diagnosing doctor hit on me after he told me that I had MS.
Wow.
So that was fun.
Pick up line.
Yeah, my doctor is going to retire in a couple of years. She's in her late 60s and I have to now look for a new doctor. I don't want a male doctor because of obvious reasons. It's a struggle. There are no MS specialists that are competent, that are women, that are fully comprehensive. There are no fully comprehensive MS wellness centers here in St. Louis. There's one at BJC and one at MOBAP, but all they do is offer literal medical care. There's no social workers, there's no therapists, there's no like nutritionists. I think one of them finally got a gynecologist. 80% of people who have MS will have like GI and gynecological problems, except there are no holistic services anywhere for us, maybe on the coast, but not here. As for school, other than the fact that I hide it from any employer until I deem they're not going to use it against me, I have been let go of a job because I was called, trigger warning, I was called crippled and said that I couldn't work there because I didn't want to walk up wet steps with like 80 pound kegs because I couldn't see well. Silly me. So it's that constant thing that's always knocking on your door. I've done 2 rounds of oral chemo while here at school. I take meds like 3 times a day. 2 of those times are during class times. And I figured after my first week of school, when my alarm, I forgot to turn it on vibrate, it went off like for a second. And my teacher, I was like, I'm sorry, that's like my med time. And she's like, can you like not move, can you move it so it's not during class? And I was like, perfect, I'll just move that around, silly little girl. Like, why did I think about interrupting you? Like, pardon me. So I'm now tell every single teacher I have first day of class that I take if I take meds during their time that I'm going to do it. They don't need to bring it up, don't stare at me, I don't make a big deal out of it. But after that one time of being like someone literally like going away from me as if I was repulsive, I have to disclose to everyone now because I feel like if I don't disclose, then I'm gonna have to deal with that. So it's not something that like a school can work on, or like it is an individualistic thing. Anybody can become disabled at any moment. It's one of those protected classes that's like not an immutable trait. So like I can't change the color of my skin just as much as I can, but I can get a disability at any time. People don't think about that. It's always, it's not going to happen to you. It's not going to be me. It could be you. It's okay. It takes about a year or 2 to come to your new identity, they say, after you're diagnosed. That is true. But it does get better. But I will say that being someone not born into a disability, it's different. It's a brave new world, but it does get better. It just takes time. Hope that wasn't too sad for everyone.
Thank you for sharing and for being very vulnerable also for each of you really, for being very vulnerable about your experiences and trusting us with those today. So finally, we'll hear from our last presenter, Mustafa, he, him, his, who likes to be called Mustafa. I don't know, I have that right. Sorry. He is a first-year PhD student in the social work program, and his research focuses on refugees with disabilities.
Yes, that's me, the last one. So yes, my name is Mustafa. I am a first-year PhD student in social work. I came to the US as a refugee from Iraq, and so I was diagnosed with my disability when I was 16, so I have been living with it quite a while. So I think stigma, it's a big problem that really isolates many people with disabilities. So as my colleague said, there is 61 million individuals in the US who have some kind of disabilities. So another statistic that I found to be very interesting, in 2014, 16% of students with disabilities was able to graduate college. I think that's a serious number that we need to think about. What we are doing wrong that we are failing students with disabilities at colleges. I have read that the high schools are doing much better these days with providing accommodation, with being inclusive. However, universities and colleges are still much behind. So for me, my refugee identity is a big identity in my life, and believe it or not, there are still countries until today, 2021, will deny refugee status to a refugee if they identify having a disability. And to me, like, that's just shocking. That shows that how society devalues people with disabilities. They think they are not worth it. They are not contributing back to society. So so I think that's a serious issue. And one of the reasons that I think we all need to be aware of is the medical model that that was practiced for a long period of time. That through medical model, that's how we came to understand people with disabilities, which this model just was about, okay, people with disabilities are sick, we need to fix them somehow, and there is nothing else we can do about it. But later on, we came to realize, oh my God, we can change policies. Like, we need to make our buildings accessible. We need to make our classrooms, our courses inclusive, and in a lot of things. But we are still slowly merging toward that. And I think for now, I have this much, but I will be happy to answer any other question. I just wanted to not let you ring us that.
All right, well, thank you, everyone. Thank you, Mustafa, for sharing. That's a really important distinction that I think not enough people are aware of, that distinction between the medical model and the social model, and how they shape public understanding of disability in different cultural contexts, not just all over the world. So I guess we'll kind of open the floor now for if anyone, and obviously the more here in person has questions for our panelists, wants to share their own experiences navigating with a disability, or or if they have someone that they know who has had to navigate higher education or a similar institution with a disability. And I would also like for this kind of conversation to be like a brainstorming session, or a place that we can create solidarity and really think about what kinds of efforts are already happening at WashU, what resources are available at WashU for people with disabilities, and what things could be made available or made more accessible at WashU. So, yeah.
On the last step that you said, I'm gonna give Aeryel a shout out and say, please tell your story. That you were talking about your first day of school story, because I think it's very relevant.
Okay.
To things that WashU can do to make our campus and our teachers really more accessible to the student body.
Well, thank you for the shout out. Yes, so Ellie here is one of my dear friends, and I feel very thankful that she has been so disability friendly, and wow, look at her, she's queen waving right now. So yeah, my friends know that my first day of classes at WashU was like treacherous. I I paid for that like $900 parking pass thing. You all know what I'm talking about? Yeah, okay. And I also had registered with disability resources. And so I guess I kind of, silly me, assumed there might be some like interdepartmental communication. It seems ostensibly that that did not occur. So I received a like parking pass for a zone that literally had me traveling pretty much as far as I possibly could across campus to all of my classes, which are in the Brown School buildings. So my first day of class, I looked at the map. I looked at kind of what was available to me as far as I knew. There's a lot of resources, so I probably missed some, but I did my best, I can say that. I arrived 45 minutes before class started, just to be sure, as a person with a disability, that I could make it on time. And it took me probably 85 minutes to get to my classroom. I got out of the parking garage, which was not super pedestrian friendly. There weren't like clear ways to exit the parking facility. And I ventured onto a very, very narrow sidewalk. And I looked, trying to find some sort of signal that there's an accessible path somewhere that I can get across the campus. But lo and behold, I did not spy any. I looked for the school map and I couldn't read it because the text is quite small. I didn't see any other accommodations to make the school map more accessible. And in fact, I believe that it was kind of off of the trail, so I couldn't even, I'd have to go off-roading with old Hildegard here in my walker. And I wasn't about to do that. So I ended up walking all the way down to like the cargo area, just trying to find a way to get my walker up to the campus without going upstairs. And it took me, through countless glances and a couple, "Are you okay?" or "I'm sorry, I hope you feel better soon." All the fun things that we're used to hearing. Made it to class. I had dressed up and I was like initially feeling very excited for the class that I had invested so much money and time into. I got to class, everyone stared, and I was, in immense pain, very disheveled, and suddenly not so excited for class and not so ready. And that kind of set the cadence for my first semester at WashU. And, it's kind of a bummer. So that's my story. Thank you for shouting me out.
Thank you for sharing that. I think that's really helpful. Yeah, just bring, like, that seems like something that should be so easy to implement, having signs that say this way is more accessible than this way,
Yeah.
but it's something that, you know, a university really hasn't invested in that much, and needs to do so. Really, really. Are there any other questions in the room or on Zoom?
That's another question. So I'm also a grad school student, and I'm sure many of you have thought about this being grad school too. But what is something that you wish that therapists or social work clinicians, or really any clinician, knew before giving you treatment or providing services? Like if you could hand out like a pamphlet saying like, know this before you work with anybody with disabilities, like what would you tell people?
Man.
It's gonna be a long time.
Yeah, I know.
I got politely asked to not return by 3 different therapists before I found one. You know, I have a little bit of trauma in the background, but like I was also trying to like work through my new identity because everything had kind of been flipped on its head for me. And I like always said in those like phone assessments first, like, hey, I have MS, look up what that is before I get here, because I'm not going to spend 45 minutes explaining to you what this is. I mean, it's a snowflake disease, so it appears differently in all of us, but you know, get the general gist before I show up. Turns out my therapist is a very recent Brown School grad, and boy, did she look it. She was nervous. And I'm like, it's okay, girl, we're gonna be fine. She looked like Rory Gilmore, which really does it for me. So like that was like very confusing. I'm like, so I'm trying to like tell her everything. I was like, this is how I feel right now. Like I went through the whole thing. I probably did like a 2-minute non-breathing monologue, and she just, these huge wide eyes, and she looked like she wanted to vomit. I was like, is it my life really that bad? I feel like I'm doing okay. She's like, I just need time to process this. I was like, do you need me to leave and come back?
I love that.
Thanks for being, do we need to work something out right now? So my greatest advice to new clinicians coming out the game, you're going to hear things that are going to shock you. You are going to hear things that are crazy. You know, this is like someone's life you're hearing, and they're like being vulnerable enough to like say it to you. So do your absolute best to have a poker face. I appreciate her honesty that she needed time to process, but looking at me like I was a circus act did not feel great. So I would say if you're nervous, if you're uncomfortable, if you're hearing something new or something that's triggering for you or traumatic, that is understandable and valid. But keep your face in check. It is imperative. Tell yourself crazy things and look at yourself in the mirror if you need to. But looking like you've seen a ghost when someone tells you what they're experiencing is not cool. So just do better than that, poor girl. I hope she's not counseling anyone.
I want to build on that because that's such an important point. I think some of us might have had, you're going in for advice, and then you have to be the one giving the therapy. And you know, as awesome as it makes you feel, it's not really what you went there for. And I think also for clinicians, do your research on the condition, and don't just like read an abstract of an article and just say, oh, this is my condition called MPS 2. Okay, that's what it is. It's so important to dig deep, get good at your job, and then follow through. I think that's another really important thing. Make sure you have a plan of, if you encounter a condition that you haven't seen, so sometimes I'll present some symptoms that they just haven't seen before, please follow through. And I remember one of the most disappointing experiences was I saw this very, very famous, good doctor. He's one of the best in this hospital system. And when I went there, I felt like it was, you know, she had all the books, a huge office, and she even had a sheet of paper, and as I'm talking, she's asking all kinds of questions and writing stuff down. And then afterwards, I'm like, okay, what are we gonna, fuck with that? She's like, nah, that's just for the effect. I'm dead serious. And to do anything, you're fine, even though I told her all these things. So please, I encourage you to, that's great that you can do that, but follow through with that, do your research, and go beyond medicine, go into the lifestyle of the patient. Super important, because it's not only about the amount of pain you're in and stuff like that. That's about social support, that's about diet, about sleep, all these things, really important, I think, and it'll help you build a better connection.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, so I think first of all, when we talk about disability, so disability is so diverse, and there's so many conditions. So it really depends on the condition and depends on the situation. And you have like intersectionality that really makes a big difference. But I really think, I want to echo my friend Zaid here, like, it's so important to be passionate. It's so important to be, to see, people with disabilities as a human. I remember I had a doctor in West Virginia, like I was always looking forward to go to his office, like, and like he even like offered me, oh, Mustafa, I can write you a letter of recommendation. You are going to graduate school, like all of these things that really was like they don't teach you in medical school. So I think like just being human will make a big difference. Yeah.
I think that it's thinking of like a holistic perspective, just like your other patients say, if people with disabilities have much more with other identities, other experiences, other interests. So those are really good points. I didn't have a question, or are you sorry. I know if there's no other questions. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I have a question. I'm also a grad school student. This is my first year, and I guess my question is, how can we be as social workers or as this, general people outside of our profession, be supporting and without being patronizing? I think that part of the problem, like at the Brown School, for example, is that there's so much ways to get into the school by being inspirational, and there's so many tracks to go down with like revolved around like, oh, look at all the change I'm gonna make in the world and all that. Like, how can we just like, I guess, approach this topic while from a like non-patronizing kind of thing?
It's a really good question. I'll start out with that. I think it's a delicate line, right? I personally, I don't have a problem with people thinking I'm great, because I feel it all the time. But in seriousness, I think one of the most helpful things when you're thinking about developing a support system is make it structured in like, okay, so let's say we're going to have a mentoring program, have there be objectives to it, because I think a lot of times like, okay, here's the support group, it's great, everybody can come talk to each other and we feel good. But to take it to the next level, from a business standpoint anyways, it's what are the measurable results that we're going to get out of this? So if it's, okay, somebody needs support in developing their research proposal, how are we not, okay, this professor going to open up my office and we're going to talk about it. I think you have a great idea, but no, what's the next action steps we're going to take? Really go above and beyond to give people tangible things to do and ways to see measurable progress, so that you feel like, okay, I'm overcoming, I'm advancing, not just because of my condition, but because I'm actually getting better at this objective thing. I think that would be really helpful.
Going off of that, when someone tells you they're having a bad day, like this sucks, or I'm in pain, or I'm tired, or X, Y, Z, always throwing positives on it. Oh God, that toxic positivity, like it can, I'm like, can you shut up? Like I can have a bad day and still be positive. So I like started this with my boyfriend, like when we're doing it, I'm like, do you want to vent or do you want to strategize? Because like I can tell you that I'm just like, I don't feel good, and like I just want to leave it at that. Or sometimes it's like, I don't feel good, and it's like, well, what can we do about this? Like, what is one small thing we can do to like work on whatever it is? So like off the goal setting, it's like, sometimes it's okay to say like, I don't feel good, and just like leave it at that. Like, I'll be positive tomorrow. I'll be positive in 5 minutes. Like, I know it's uncomfortable for you that I'm not positive right now, because I feel like as disabled people, we have to always be like, yeah, but I'm fine. It's
Yeah.
fine. It's
Yeah.
great. Don't worry about me. It's like, I can be not okay for a minute and still, in the larger sense, I'm okay. It's just like, it's not a good moment right now. So maybe I just want to say I'm not having a good moment, or maybe I want to strategize and be like, I don't know what to do about this. I'm not having a good day. It's going to be bad again tomorrow. So like, what can I do about that? I don't know if toxic positivity is a word. It is now.
It is.
Yeah, right.
Cool. Look at that.
Coming
Look at
along.
that.
Woo. Yeah, I want to just echo what my colleagues have said. And in general, I think ideologically, it's important to just like try to attune to each other, especially, if you're in a therapeutic type relationship. If your client wants to celebrate something they've accomplished, then like amplify that. But I think where it becomes patronizing, and again, it is a dance, and it's okay to make mistakes. That's something that I think is important to note. The important thing is that we make the space safe enough for an open dialogue that doesn't feel like there's a power differential. But being really kind of in tune with each other and recognizing that like if the client, sorry, oh, you're good too. Like moving around a lot, but if the client is saying like, I got out of bed this morning and I feel really like positive about that, then like celebrate with them. What the heck? But attaching kind of a moral or kind of assigning any sort of distinction to an action, I think should first probably come from the client when we're talking about disability, at least. But yeah, everything that everyone else has said, 100% agree.
Yeah, I want to also like echo, I think we need to realize that everything we build it kind of like, like in the able-bodied mentality. So a lot of the structure, like even like intellectual structure that we have, we usually build it to benefit able-bodied people. So, and that is one thing. Another thing, I think, if you want to be a supportive member, I think you first have to unlearn a lot of things, because we have learned a lot of like stereotypical things through the media, and through a lot of things that show the negative side of people with disabilities. So I think until we become until we realize these internalized biases, stereotypes, then we can't do anything. So I really think if we want to be supportive, first we need to unlearn a lot of things and question a lot of things, question the policies we have, and reach out to community centers that people with disabilities hang out, see the programs, talk to people with disabilities, hear their stories, and that's how you can like build your knowledge and yeah.
Well, that's exciting.
Are you okay? Sounds like a delicious.
Unexpected noise from our table. So I do want to be respectful of people's time. It is getting close to 5 or
4,
The
yeah,
clock-
5,
the
5.
clock is
Yeah,
in.
5.
Yeah.
It's getting close to 5, so if you do need to head out either on Zoom or here in the room, that is fine. But I do want to make a list, a few minutes for people who have questions on Zoom. So if anyone could stick around. There aren't any questions. Okay.
Oh, we're
Great.
good.
Well,
Perfect.
we
I'm sorry, is it fine? Yeah, so you all for, so, wonderful, open with your answers. I guess my questions come from, an instructional point of view. So I'm gonna be teaching as a graduate student, and something I've been hearing a lot is that, oh, it's so great to come back to normality in sense of like face-to-face instruction, but I know that a lot of tools like the, how do you call it?
Live transcription.
Yeah, it's really useful. So I just wanna, I know that this is like my look for myself, but do you have a specific tool or, something that it was really useful or has been really useful for you in terms of receiving classes that, something as easy as a transcription that maybe we just thought, oh, that's something just for virtuality, and now that we are coming back to classes back to normal, we just forget about those kind of things.
Just to clarify,
Sure.
are you asking for tools that we found helpful on Zoom that you would like to kind of make sure you implement, or are you asking more for what can be translated into in-person classes?
Yeah, I mean, I'm talking about tools in general that might help the classroom more accessible.
Okay.
And most of the time, those tools are digitals. So I'm just talking about the current discourse of, oh, going back to classes is so great. And I think that's all videos of how certain digital tools are really helpful for people with disabilities. So I'm just kind of voicing that. But not only on Zoom, if you have any suggestion, I'm happy to listen to those.
Wonderful.
I had an instructor send out a Google form that, asked all the common stuff it asked. And then one of the spaces was, is there anything going on with you this semester that you want me to know about? So I guess anyone could have put anything in there. I put like, I'm going through 2 rounds of chemo this semester, so I might not be chipper all the time. And that was great. And she's actually gone through it too. So like she gets it. So I found that helpful because I don't have to like announce it. Because I'm already kind of forced into disclosure because of the meds I take. So like, it's nice. I'll disclose whenever I want. I'm very open about having MS, but like, I don't like having to be forced into being open about it. So like having that Google form that like allowed, or if I didn't want to put it, I didn't have to put it. Like that was I like that a lot, because then I could just tell her and it didn't have to be like, pull you aside, let me tell you the secret sort of thing. It was just like, here's a normal thing that's going on with my life.
Love
Take
that.
it or leave it.
That's great.
That's a great
Yeah.
idea. I wish I had something like that.
Oh gosh, me too.
Shout outs to Trish Cole.
Yeah, I think academia is way behind in providing accommodations. And from my experience and from a lot of students with disabilities that I have talked with, like when you talk about like accommodation with professors, most of or some of the times, like it feels like they are doing a favor to you, or when they give you an accommodation, it sounds like they are being unfair to other students. So I think there is a lot that the academia needs to catch up with. But when it comes to the online, changes, I think, in one hand, it helped. For example, in my situation, like just, being able to access my courses online. But on the other hand, I'm already isolated. So this just added another layer of isolation to my life. So yeah, I think it has both sides, like the benefits and positives.
100%.
Yeah, I think the flexibility is so important, and I think fits right into our Brown School values. So I think we should kind of aim for that. And then like really practically, something that I have been really frustrated by is like, this is a Zoom thing. So not so much pertinent to like in-person classes, but the breakout rooms, if I am not at my computer and then I'm like launched into this room, but like, they can't necessarily know that I need to take a moment. I'm not at my computer at this moment, or I can't physically like turn my mute off and on and react timely. I think that has been really frustrating and has felt very isolating. And so I guess I would encourage any like people who are implementing Zoom instruction. I would encourage like try to notify students like not 30 seconds before you start your breakout rooms, but like 5 minutes before, so they can plan accordingly. I think a really big thing for like equity is just like allowing people to like have a moment to express kind of what their needs are, so they can engage, which is really like, I think it should be the goal of our professors, is to have their students succeed and learn. So that's that, I guess.
I think building off of what Mustafa said with the Zoom was isolating. So I started out in COVID and I was all completely online. They're actually tricky to get it to be online, but that's something for another day. What I think the most important thing here was that, yes, you become very isolated. And so in my school, I don't think it's as much about COVID. I think it's more convenience. They're leaning often towards Zoom for outside of class things. And I think that it's so important to have, okay, let's say, yes, let's keep the flexibility for classes. People can be in person or online, but also make space for people to just get together and get to know each other in person. We have like these brown bag-esque things that I guess used to be in person for a long time, probably were a couple times a year, but all of a sudden they're all online. And so for people that, hey, maybe I not be able to make class in person, but I still want to get to know people, having these spaces would be awesome.
Well, we'll give our panelists to like that. So I'd like this conversation to continue in any way that it possibly can. I know that Mustafa here is a current CDI graduate fellow and is working on some additional programming that will be starting next semester, I think, right? About disability. If you're interested in learning more about these topics, I am creating our CDI website has some self-study guides on different topics related to diversity, inclusion, and equity, and I'm creating one on disability and accessibility and another one on anti-fat bias. I'm hoping that those will be on our website by the end of the semester. But yeah, also feel free to stop by the CDI sometimes or send us a message if you want to talk about these topics. Yeah, and thank you all for being here today in person and in Zoom.
Yeah, thanks for coming,
Thank you.
everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.